This 8-year-old girl is found wandering helplessly around a train station. She has no memory of her parents, where she is from, or how she got there. An orphan with a past steeped in mystery. Who would have known that this little girl would brutally murder her adoptive family? Was she even really an orphan? My name's Emma and I'm going to tell you the case of the Maguad siblings. The little girl discovered at the train station in September of 2013 was named Janice. As we said, she has no recollection of her past. The woman who found her uploaded some photos onto Facebook in the hope that maybe some family or friends might recognise her. No one did, no one claimed her, and therefore this little girl went into an orphanage. As Janice grew up, she got various domestic work to try and make ends meet. In 2020, she got a job as a nanny with a family. This family were related to the Maguad family. The Maguad family were a very loving and caring family, and they lived in the Philippines. Cruz the father and Lavella the mother were both teachers or worked at a local school. They had 2 biological children, 18-year-old Crizzle Gwyn, who was attending medical school hoping to be a doctor, and a 16-year-old son, Crisville Louis, who was still at high school and had aspirations to become a lawyer. They were great children. They were intelligent, kind, caring, and Cruz and Lavella provided a very loving and safe childhood for them. Finances were modest, but it was a very happy home. In 2021, there is a family gathering at a church-related event. The family that Janice is employed with as a nanny attend this event. The Maguad family also arrive at this gathering, and this is the first time that Janice and the daughter Gwyn meet. They instantly get on. They become very good friends very quickly. They begin posting TikTok videos together, dancing. Janice also gets on really well with the son, Louis. Gwyn asked Janice why she wasn't in school, and Janice explained her past, saying that she's an orphan, she has to work to make ends meet, and therefore she has no education. Janice also explains how she has no one, she has no family, she has no real friends, just the people that employ her. Gwyn Maguad, who is a very loving and caring young woman, she's training to become a doctor, she wants to help people in the world. She really feels for Janice, and she goes up to her parents, Cruz and Lavella, and convince them to adopt this orphan. At this time, Janice is 16 years old, and Cruz and Lavella are hesitant. They don't have much money. They also don't have any spare bedrooms, but Louis, the son, offers to sleep on the couch and give up his bedroom to Janice. So in July of 2021, the Maguad family informally adopt Janice. It's a fostering arrangement, and because it was temporary and informal, no psychological evaluations were done or any real research into Janice's background. Now, the Maguads weren't seeing this as a permanent solution. They wanted to help Janice get a good education so she could get a good job and then be independent. They were a very generous family. They funded her to go to school. They also looked to get her a scholarship so she could get specific training and qualifications. There were, however, very early warning signs in Janice's behaviour. So around $200 went missing from the Maguad's home. Initially, Janice said, it must have been a thief. They must have leaned in and taken it. But the Maguads found this odd. Why would the thief not take anything else from the house? There was also no sign of a break-in, and then Gwyn was looking through Janice's stuff and found a secret compartment in her backpack. Within this compartment was the $200. Janice confessed to taking the money, and she blamed it on the poverty that she had come from. She said she was panicking about money. She'd never had really any money before, and that's why she just impulsively took it. Gwyn defended her and convinced her parents to let Janice stay. Gwyn offered to help Janice through any emotional instability she had or trauma, and offered to go to church with her regularly. Gwyn was such a loving and kind young woman, and that's what makes this story so tragic. Janice had finally found her feet with the Maguad family. She had a home, she had food on the table, she was getting an education, she had stability, she had people around her who genuinely loved her and wanted the best for her. However, over the coming months, Janice grew deep resentment for the Maguad siblings, particularly Gwyn. She felt as though she was inferior to Gwyn. She felt as though Cruz and Lavella loved Gwyn more. Cruz, the father, later said that it was like she wanted to take Gwyn's place, and she wanted to be the only child in that household to be loved. So to counter this resentment and feeling of inferiority, she would constantly remind them of how she was an orphan. She would play the pity card in order to gain constant sympathy. And on December the 10th, 2021, the Maguad family woke. Cruz and Lavella made breakfast and then headed to work. That morning, it was the first time Janice had ever called them Mum and Dad. However, on 3 p.m. that very same day, Janice begins uploading worrying statuses on Facebook. She was saying that people had broken into the house. She was pleading people to contact the police. She said that she was hiding under the bed and begging people to come and help. One of Cruz's co-workers saw what Janice was uploading onto Facebook and immediately told Cruz. He raced back to the family home. When he arrived, he's screaming for his children. He tries to open the front door, but it's locked. He can also see blood kind of everywhere, and there's a blanket soaked in blood just outside the front door. He can't get in through the front door. He tries the back door, but that's also locked. So he ends up getting a rock and smashing the kitchen window and going in through there. As he makes his way through to the living room, what he discovers is truly horrific. His 18-year-old daughter Gwyn is in a pool of her own blood, alongside his 16-year-old son Louis. Both have been badly beaten. Louis is gagged and bound. There is smashed glass everywhere, and at the side is a baseball bat and a hammer. Both of his children have clearly been murdered, and the initial signs of rigor mortis have set in. He is clinging to them and they feel stiff and cold. He's crying, screaming their names, and as he looks across, Janice walks in and she is soaked, not in blood, but water. She's just come out of the shower. She doesn't have a single wound on her, and she apologizes for not answering Cruz when he was screaming everyone's name. She begins to tell Cruz that 3 masked men entered the family home and began attacking Gwyn and Louis. She only survived because she hid under the bed in one of the bedrooms. Cruz phoned his wife Lavella to tell her the tragic news, and she was just absolutely beside herself. The bodies were taken away, and an autopsy revealed that Gwyn had been stabbed over 32 times. Louis had various cuts and had been beaten and strangled to death. This was overkill. This was a crime of rage. Nothing of importance had been taken from the house apart from Gwyn's phone. So the police begin investigating, and they realise very quickly that nothing has been taken from the house, and also all the weapons used had been in that house. So the hammer was Cruz's, the baseball bat was Louis's. So whoever these attackers were came with nothing and just used what they found in the home. Also, Janice said that she had locked the door to Louis's bedroom and hid under the bed. But the attackers would have had to have entered that room in order to retrieve the baseball bat. Louis's bedroom was in complete disarray and covered in blood. So how was Janice hiding in there with the door locked? Janice's story is already looking very inconsistent, and why is she the only sole survivor? Also, when they look at her Facebook posts, so she begins posting at 3 p.m, and when Cruz, the father, arrives at 3:15, the bodies of Gwyn and Louis already have early onset signs of rigor mortis. In fact, the autopsy discovered that Gwyn and Louis died around 2 p.m, so 1 hour before Janice started posting these pleas for help. Also, they realised as she was posting pleas for help and saying, "Someone call the police," she wasn't answering any calls or any messages, so she wasn't being proactive in trying to get the help. During that time when she was on Facebook making those appeals, Janice changed her name. Why would you even think of doing that when you're in the midst of being attacked and hearing your siblings be brutally murdered? The other odd thing was, why was she taking a shower after hearing and witnessing her siblings being attacked? She said it was to calm her nerves. When the police searched the house, they did find an ID card for a 17-year-old boy who lived locally called Esmeraldo Canedo. They also searched the local canal and found a plastic bag, and inside were the bloodied clothes that Janice was wearing that day. She'd obviously tried to dispose of them, but it was unsuccessful because this plastic bag got caught on a branch on the bank of the canal. When they analysed the baseball bat, they also discovered that it had Janice's fingerprints all over it. So Janice was brought in and questioned for hours, and afterwards she confessed to the brutal murder of both her siblings, Gwyn Maguad and Louis Maguad. So the two people that convinced their parents to take Janice in, provide her with a home, food, an education and a great start to life, Janice had turned around and brutally murdered them, and she had done this with the help of Esmeraldo Canedo, a local boy who was completely smitten with Janice. When they looked at Janice's Facebook, they found various messages between her and Canedo planning this murder up to 10 days in advance. Within these messages, Janice expressed a deep hatred for Gwyn. She felt as though Gwyn was the favourite child. She didn't like the fact that she had to share her with the Maguad parents. On the day of the murders, Janice unlocked the front door to let Canedo in. He began brutally attacking Gwyn with various weapons that he could find, glass bottles, machetes. Gwyn actually managed to run out of the house, but then raced back in the hopes of saving Louis and Janice. At this point, she didn't know that Janice was also involved. When she returned, Janice began attacking her. Gwyn had extensive defensive wounds. Some of her limbs were partly severed, and one ear was completely cut off. She put up a real fight, so when she returns to the house to save Louis and Janice, Janice begins attacking her with a knife. Gwyn starts screaming, "This is just a dream, this is just a dream. I don't know what I did wrong. I will still be a doctor. I love you, Janice." So even in that moment, as she's being brutally attacked by her adoptive sister, she still has this forgiveness, this loving, this want to do good in the world. After attacking and murdering Gwyn, they move on to Louis, and it's believed that he was in a deep sleep. He didn't have as many defensive wounds. They beat him with a baseball bat and a hammer, strangled him and gagged him with a towel. They then left him by the front door. Both Janice and Canedo then decided to take a shower, change their clothes, place the bloody ones in a plastic bag and dump it in the local canal. Janice then heads back to the family home, and that's when she begins posting on Facebook. She tries to set up the house to make it seem as though there had been intruders. When the news of this family massacre occurred and hit the headlines in the Philippines, a girl stepped forward claiming to be Janice's stepsister. So this girl, and I think her identity is protected for various reasons, comes forwards and says, "That's Janice, that's my stepsister, and her parents are still alive." It is discovered that Janice is not an orphan. Her parents are alive and well. They separated due to her father having a gambling addiction, but they are still around. The stepsister claims that Janice left because she had a deep-seated hatred towards her parents. Janice actually has 3 biological siblings, and when this all came out, her biological mother made a public apology for what Janice had done. She even approached Cruz and Lavella and was just crying, hysterical, saying, "I'm so sorry." Cruz and Lavella Maguad, no blame or resentment towards Janice's biological mother. Knowing all this now, so when Janice was 8 years old and found at that train station, she immediately began lying. She hadn't forgotten about her parents. She knew where she came from. Some psychologists believe that this was her early learning stage of being able to manipulate people to gain affection through lying. No one knows why she had such a deep-seated hatred for her parents. That was never disclosed, and maybe something traumatic did happen that made her want to leave. But that is certainly absolutely no excuse for what she did to the Maguad siblings, people that only showed her love, affection and warmth, friendship. In May 2022, Janice was sentenced to 31 years without parole for 2 counts of murder for Gwyn Maguad and Louis Maguad. She is initially sent to a juvenile detention centre until she reaches the age of 21, and then she will be moved to an adult facility. In court, she appeared cold, calculating. She showed absolutely no remorse and never apologised for what she had done. Canedo received 29 years without parole. He was also initially put in a juvenile detention centre, but as of 2024, he has been moved to an adult facility. The parents, Cruz and Lavella, although acknowledged that they were given the maximum sentences, believe that the brutality of the crime deserves a much harsher sentence. They are currently petitioning for both of them to receive harsher sentences. So these loving parents gave this orphan a home, support, education, and in return they received a horrific, brutal attack on their biological children, taking their lives away from them and leaving 2 grieving parents. That was the sad and very tragic case of the Maguad siblings. My name's Emma, and if you like my content, please remember to like, subscribe and comment. I do also have a podcast on Spotify, which is called True Crime with Emma, if you prefer to listen to things via podcast. If you have any suggestions, please let me know, and I will see you next time.